Many people are brought up to believe that asking for help is a sign of weakness when it's not. It's a sign of strength, and it's a sign that you know what you can do, where your confidence is at, and where you need support.
Hello there, it's me, Steve Mellor, and welcome in to GrowthReady, the podcast that allows high performers to reveal the reality behind what it means to ready yourself for growth, the personal and professional challenges along the growth journey, while also allowing the high-performance executive coach in me to satisfy his curiosity toward what drives optimal performance. On this episode, we welcome the founder of Precision Search and professional speaker, Aaron Golub. And having made a life and a career of adapting to the most adverse circumstances that he's been handed, Aaron has learned the power that a heightened self-awareness can have on growth, all to ready you for anything that might be coming your way. Hey guys, as we get started here with the episode, I want to just take 1 minute of your time to make a request for you to subscribe and rate the show. For our show to be easily discovered by other potential listeners, we need our current listeners, that's you, to take the time to not only subscribe, but to also rate the show. Whether you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, whatever platform of choice, there are typically ways to be rating the show. So go ahead and click something like that 5th star and be sure to take that additional time to leave a comment or two about why it is you enjoy listening to the GrowthReady podcast. Your efforts on this will allow our show to be more discoverable, which means we're going to find more listeners and continue to have that significant impact on the community of human performance and personal development that I know you are all benefiting from by being listeners to this show. Please go ahead, take the time, subscribe, rate the show today. Hey, and while you're at it, why don't you share it with a few people as well? I appreciate you guys. Let's get to the interview. Hello and welcome back into the most recent installment of GrowthReady. I am excited to be welcoming on a previous guest from our formerly named show, career competitor, Aaron Golub, to be joining the show. And before, Aaron, we get into really just updating folks on what you've been doing here recently and where you're maybe looking ahead now into the future, I want to ask you a question that I've been eager to ask you now for some time, which is, what does it mean to you to be growth ready?
Yeah, no, thanks, Steve. And I think when someone says, what does it mean to be growth ready? For me, it means being adaptable, being willing to, fail and learn from those failures. But I think it's being able to adapt to situations at hand, being able to adapt to change, and being able to, fail and learn.
There's actually an opportunity here to grow and learn through the adaptability as well, that there is a result of the adaptability. And I think that's key, right? Because if you're having to adapt, you're going through change, you're going through adversity, whatever it may be, it's really hard to see that at that light, if you will, at the end of the tunnel, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so for you, when you think of your own journey to where you are today, you've now taken on a new venture here in the past year. What is it that has continued to allow you to be adaptable to these new things, these new ideas, these new ventures that you continue to take on in your world?
I think, and I'm not going to backstep too far because I know we talked about not kind of doing too much of the backstory, but
sure. I
graduated from college in 2018, and I worked for, at the time, a financial firm. I was also building my business as a speaker. And over the years, building a business as a speaker, for me, with my story and my background, was kind of low-hanging fruit. Like, I knew I could figure it out. I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know that stuff. But it was at the same time low-hanging fruit. And so I figured out how to build it, but then scaling it was something that wasn't low-hanging fruit. Figured out how to scale it. I had been involved along the years in other entrepreneurial ventures. Some had done well, some hadn't. Most hadn't. But just learning and growing. And I think anyone, their first few years of entrepreneurship, they're not like a high-level entrepreneur. They're learning. They're doing the basics. And I think the businesses that I was in the past and where I was honestly just so much learning and growing. It didn't matter that things failed or things didn't. It was just about that. My speaking was the one business that always continued, and I still speak. My goal in the future, and we're going to get into that in a minute, isn't always to speak the amount I'm currently speaking, but I'm still speaking all the time, working with companies, working with conferences, working with teams all around the world all the time. However, I saw an opportunity about a year ago. I implemented something a little over a year ago, a year and a few months ago. I implemented something for myself. It worked incredibly well, and figured, why can't I turn this into a business? It would help so many other people, but also doing it manually is an absolute pain. So we'll talk about it, but I basically figured out how to take this thing. I was working with my sister on some other aspects of my business. She became a partner in this. We, co-founded this. We learned how to automate it. We hired a development team, developed it, and we basically, in the last 9 months, built a software from ground up, and now run a SaaS product, and their goal is to grow and scale, a SaaS company.
And we're going to put this in the show notes, is that you were someone who was legally blind, that played D1 athletics, that then became an NFL free agent, again, in this format as someone who is legally blind, and that you've very much built your story, your journey, off of those adversities and what you've learned through that growth. And for me, one thing I took from our initial conversation was just the incredible awareness that you had and the acceptance that you had of your situation. It was just this notion of, I am in the situation I'm in. I can look at this from a 1,000 different perspectives if I want, but there's one perspective, if I choose to take it, it actually allows me to take ownership and control of my circumstances, of my situation, and then make the most of them, whereas 99.9% of people would probably have said, this is my situation and this prevents me. You're in that 0.1 that's decided to say, no, this is my situation, and despite it, I'm still going to make what I believe I'm capable of making happen. And so for me, I think that is such a it's important just to give what we're talking about that context, because I'm hearing it yet again in the genesis of this idea with this work you're now doing with your sister, is that you see an opportunity, you see it as something that you could just continue to, it could be your own thing, you do it manually, and you reap the benefits of it. And yet you're looking at it and saying, not only does this not need to be manual, but it also doesn't need to be just for me, it could be for anybody. And so I'm just curious, like, how would you describe where that innate talent or innate behavior comes from, just to sort of not necessarily accept your circumstances and instead lean into it and say, hey, you know what? Here's the opportunity for me in this moment.
I mean, I think it's self-awareness of what is going on for you at the moment, where your weaknesses are, where your strengths are, and we'll get into a bunch of that. But, look, not only am I at this point where I realize, look, speaking's great. I love it, but at the same time, I don't want to do 100 speaking engagements a year. It's only so scalable. To make more money, you have to get on more planes or do more virtual. It's trading time for money. And you can make great money doing it, don't get me wrong. I've done very well with it, but I will never be able to scale a business as a speaker to the level that I actually want to scale a business. And so you have to be self-aware of, what do you actually want? I don't want to be traveling all over the world all the time. I would love, my perfect world is in 3 years from now, I'm doing 25, 30 speaking engagements a year, not 100. Like that's my goal in a few years from now. However, I also had this self-awareness to understand my long-term goal is, like, I want to build and scale a real company. I'm not saying that speaking isn't a real company, but I think in this day of online entrepreneurs, anything can be a business. You can make money doing anything, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, like, my goal is I want to build a $100 million company. And that's not going to happen around a personal brand, because, I mean, it could, but a personal brand isn't something you can sell. And my goal is to build something that we could truly scale, and if I wanted to one day, really sell. And I realized that what we had done for myself not only could help other businesses, it could help you, it could help tons of people bring in more business themselves, but it's truly scalable. And because of that, it's hopefully going to be a sellable asset in 5, 10, 15 years from now that we could change our lives.
I would love now for us to take this opportunity just to learn what this is, what the product is, what the company is, what it is you're now working on, and why it is that one thing I always like to ask when we're working on something new, why it is you feel as though right now is the time to be doing it, and why obviously you're excited about that.
Yeah, so the company's name is Precision Search. The website's precisionsearch.io. And what it is a specific type of SEO software. And so most people, if you're, running a business, have done some sort of SEO in the past, whether it be, on-page or off-page SEO, and happy to dive deeper into those if you'd like for, the audience as well. But basically what we built out is a tool that's called programmatic SEO. And so, the point of it is most of the time, if you're going to hire an SEO agency, you're going to spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month for an SEO agency that's either going to take 6, 9, 12 months to actually see results, if you see results at all, and it takes a long time. It's hard. It's challenging. And don't get me wrong, I think there's always a place for SEO. And if someone can use that type of SEO and what we're doing, I think that's even going to see better results. However, what programmatic SEO is you build out tons and tons of pages, not blogs, but web pages attached to your website that you go after what are called long tail keywords. And I'll use myself as an example because I was the first case study. Ranking for best keynote speaker, almost impossible to show up on page 1 of Google. However, I'll give you an example of one of a speaking engagement I landed recently, or I did recently from this. Best keynote speaker or best motivational speaker, Columbia, South Carolina. Not that hard to rank top page of Google. And so I built out all these pages, and it doesn't need to be that. We can get into more of this, but you could, rank for an e-com store for best red running shoes for marathons, just long tail keywords. And, for example, I got all this inbound traffic because people thought I lived in the area. And, some of them, they're like, oh, we got $100 budget. I'm like, I'm not flying in for that. Like, no, thank you. I appreciate it. But then I also got a ton of people who, because I showed up there, they reached out to me. I was able to convince them, hey, no, I'm not in the area, but this is why you should still hire me. And I've landed very well paid speaking engagements because of that. And it got me thinking, why can't we do this for other businesses, whether it be a realtor, an attorney, a plumber, someone who's local, or an e-com store, someone who's national, even a coach, someone who wants to coach someone on specific things, whatever that looks like, anyone with a website. Built this out. So we have this, tool now that we built out, the software that helps you identify and create, all these long tail keywords. You can select them yourself. We can help you identify them. It will work with you to create thousands of web pages that go after these long tail keywords that will basically index on Google and, get your name out there so you can actually bring business into your website. And the whole goal is to get more people to your site. I mean, after doing this in the first 9 months, I think my site saw, and I think it's in the VSL on our website, but my site saw like a 3,000% increase in impressions and like a 300% increase in like clicks or something like that. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but the point is, the goal is to bring more traffic to your site. And then, you can hopefully get more opportunities to close deals. And the nice thing about this is you can see results quicker than traditional SEO. It's also a lot less expensive than hiring a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 agency.
Yeah. I love that. It's a cool idea. And you said the word coach. I'm like, hey, I'm a coach. I'm listening to this. I'm like, hey, this sounds pretty good. And there's no doubt that, based on the work that you're doing as a speaker, that this is the kind of service that will help you enormously. But where I would love to go from here is to bring it back now to that self-awareness that you spoke of earlier in terms of what you want. You alluded to the fact you want to get down to 25 to 30 speaking engagements a year. You want to have a business that gives you the kind of income and scalability opportunities that allow you to go where it is you want to go. So one thing we don't often do on this show, which I want to kind of play with you here and do, is, hey, what does it look like if this is a success? Like, what does success look like to you when it comes to this? Because it's one of those questions that I think sometimes we're too scared to really answer and do the work around. And so I'm just curious, you're an athlete, you're a guy that isn't afraid to answer the hard questions. And so I'm curious, just from your standpoint, what does success look like for you when it comes to this entire venture?
I mean, in my absolute wildest dreams, it would take two paths, one of two paths. Either path A, and we build it and sell it for $100 million, or B, we grow it to the point where we scale it and we IPO it, and take it that way. I mean, like, my goal is to truly run a global company. And look, will that happen? I don't know. I have no idea. It might make $20 million a year, and guess what? That's phenomenal if it gets to that point. But at the same time, I'm always a person, back from football in high school, who's just had the wildest dreams, the wildest ideas of how I can do this. And my opinion is always shoot for something that's extremely hard, extremely high, because if my goal is to build something that you either sell for $100 million or you IPO, guess what? If you hit it, amazing. But if I sell it for $50 million, that was pretty damn good.
Right. And I think that's almost what I want to dedicate some time to here, because I love that you made this about, initially in response to the question, you talked about adaptability, you talked about the need to learn through the adaptability, and then now here we are talking more about self-awareness and knowing what it is you want. And for you to just lean in and just say, hey, listen, in my wildest dreams, and then to give us that answer about that insight about what your wildest dreams look like, I'm certainly curious, like, from your standpoint, when you look at the world out there, when you think about the people you've interacted with and engaged with over the years, why is it that we sometimes refrain from leaning in to these ideas, to these possible passion projects that actually can lead us to fulfilling our wildest dreams? Because clearly you're not hesitating. You're going with your sister.
Yeah.
But why is it that people tend to hesitate when it comes to this kind of commitment?
People don't want to get uncomfortable. They like being comfortable. And look, there's lots of ways to think of dreams. Not everyone needs to try and build a business like this. Not everyone should. Most people shouldn't, because most people are not meant to be entrepreneurs, and that's totally fine. That's also a completely different conversation. But regardless if your dream is around entrepreneurship, whether it's around a relationship, a fitness, whatever that dream is, most people just enjoy being comfortable and don't want to get uncomfortable. If you want to get into shape, well, guess what? It's going to be work. It's going to be hard. If you want to do something like that. And I think that you need to understand that you need to, at a certain point, not only have this dream, but also enjoy it. The reason I got so good at football was because I loved it. I enjoyed it. I didn't care that I had to do what nobody else would do when nobody else was around. I love business, and I've learned to love business. Now, in the beginning, I think it was probably more about, I want to make money. That's cool. Like now, like, look, when I say $100 million, like, that's such an arbitrary number.
Sure.
It could be 70, it could be 300. Like, that's an arbitrary number. Because for me, it's not about the money. It's about, of course, anyone who says that I actually think is lying. So I'm going to walk that back.
Yeah.
Of course, I want to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
However, the specific number is arbitrary because it's a game to me. Business is the same as sports. It's how can I do better this month than last month, this quarter than last quarter, this year than last year. And when you enjoy it and have fun with it and can look at it as a game, it becomes a lot easier because I'm focusing on how can I win now that I didn't win last time.
Yeah. And I'm so thankful that you could put it into that perspective for us, is the game, that there is literally a game that is being played, that there are results that we can assess, that are techniques and lessons and areas for growth that we can assess and we can look back on and we can somewhat tweak the next day. We don't have to always reinvent the wheel each and every time. It could just be the slightest adjustment here and the slightest adjustment there. But then sometimes there is a need to have those harder conversations where we do need to reinvent things and we do need to completely reassess. And the game itself, I'm curious, just from what you're doing day in, day out, how are you ensuring that you keep this a game? Like, I'm hearing a lot of just innate behaviors that you already have, and sometimes that can be hard for people to sort of understand because, hey, we're all different. But for you, I'm curious, do you have any approaches that make what you're doing currently more of a game where you can assess a win versus a loss, for example?
See, it's a really interesting and tough question for me right now because of the situation we've been in. So, like, we started developing this tool in, like, January, and we are just now, like, actually starting to onboard people in, now in September. And so it took us most of the year, 9 or so months, I mean, I don't know, 8-9 months, whatever, to get to the point to really build it from scratch. I'm not a software developer. I don't know how to develop a software. I hired a software development team, and me and my sister, oversaw them, have been testing it, have been trialing it, have been going back and forth. And so for the longest time, it wasn't a clear path. It was, we don't know what we're doing. We don't know how to develop this. Things are going to break. I thought this was going to be ready in June. Guess what? It was ready in September. And again, off topic, but if you're ever trying to build a software, however long you think it's going to take, double it, because you're going to hit a million bumps.
Yeah.
But I think now it's what do we need to do and set out specific goals. Like a few months ago, my sister and I had set out what are our goals of when we want to hit this number of customers, this number, and where we want to hit this number of MRR and these types of things. Now, those we're actually going to revisit them, later this week because we didn't launch a couple months ago. We officially started bringing on people now. And that's kind of where I turned it into a game, because now that we are live and we can do marketing and we can do outreach and we can do all these things, I can say, okay, our goal is to get the first 50 customers by this date. How can we turn it into a game and how can we get there? We want to get to 200 customers by this date, 1,000 by this date. And those will correlate to different MRRs, obviously, based on the number of customers, but you just figure out what are these goals you have and how can you have fun with it to try and hit them. Some months, some quarters, you're going to beat them. Some you're not. But at the end of the day, if you can have these lined out things that you can strive for, then it not only becomes more fun, but it becomes easier. Because if I were just going to go and be like, I want to get to 10,000 as fast as possible, that's such a far away goal where that's a great goal to have. And maybe I'll set that for 2 years from now. But right now, it's how do we get to the first 50? And if we want to get the first 50, let's set a specific date, because then that's going to actually push us. If our goal is 50 by November 15th, okay, we got 2 months to get there. What do we need to do everything in our power to get to those first 50? And then guess what? If we're November 1st and we have 40, we're going to push ourselves really hard to get that last 10 in that week. But setting things like that, I think, really help.
Yeah, you said a word in there that I think is important to highlight, is that you said fun. You said you can make this fun. And just to add to that, I really appreciate the context around what you've gone through over the last 8 or 9 months, because this is what this show has become since the last time you were on it, is that we want to get into the dirty pieces. We want to get into the behind the scenes stuff where it's like, hey, at the end of the day, everything that you just alluded to prior to that comment around, hey, I want to get to 100 million and all this kind of thing, people listen to that and be like, yeah, go, dude. Like, this sounds awesome. This sounds so cool. This sounds so exciting. But it's like, well, what's the reality right now? Well, the reality right now is that for the last 9 months, we've executed a 6-month plan that took 9 months, and we've had to really just kind of knuckle down and reassess as we've gone and adjust. There we are. Be adaptable to the current climate of what it is that this process is actually handing us. We can't play a game that isn't currently in front of us. We have to wait for the game to actually show up so we can go and play it. And so I think that is huge for anybody listening to this. It's just like, don't discredit some of the foundational work that goes into what you then want to go and create and turn into a game. And then ideally even make it fun, which again, I would love for you in your own words just to sort of tell people, how do you make it fun? Like, how do you find it? Because again, I'm with you. Just so you know, we're on the same page right now. I love the fun in terms of growing my business and all that kind of thing. I love the fun of growing this podcast. Yeah. But in your words, how do you make things fun?
I think it's the first step is what we already talked about of gamifying, like when you hit certain customers or certain milestones. Because to me, like that's enjoyable. You get really excited of how you hit this, when you make sales, how you do the marketing. Like that is really enjoyable. But I think also it's making sure that you work well with the people around you and learning from them and enjoying your team. And I'll give you an example there. And so our software development team is based in India. And I've worked with plenty of people overseas. I have people on my team from the Philippines, and I've worked with people other countries in the past. But every time you work with different people in new countries, it teaches you new areas of leadership and new areas of how to actually manage people, because cultures are different. The way they present things are different. They might say one thing and mean one thing where we interpret it differently.
Sure.
And you need to really learn the different cultures and how to manage them, because I can promise you I manage them very different than I would manage a US development team or someone from South America. It is very different. And those are things that we've learned a lot about this year. And I think we've been able to have a lot of fun with them and enjoy working together and joking around, but at the same time work extremely hard. But it's taught us so much, and I think if you go into it blindly not knowing how to do it, you're not going to be able to have fun with different people from different places. But the more you get to know them and the more you learn how to actually work with them to succeed, that's when you can start actually enjoying it with everyone around you on your team.
Yeah, and one thing I like to do is just kind of put my coaching hat on for a moment and acknowledge that, yes, the milestones and the reaching the milestones is fun, but the real fun comes from the acknowledgement of reaching the milestone, to actually stop in the moment and say, we hit the 50 by November 15th or whatever it is. We got there and we did it, and we're willing to press pause for just long enough to acknowledge that we attained the milestone, and we're making time to appreciate the attainment of the milestone. And it's the same thing with what you were alluding to there with the team. We sometimes take that for granted. We work in an environment that we work so hard to turn into a place where we can be authentic, where we can be close and connected with one another, where we can lead with integrity, where we can lead effectively, where we can communicate openly, all these things. And then we don't do the simple act of just saying, hey, this is fun. This is fun that we actually get to operate this way and work this way. And there's actually and you said something there too, is like, you then get to acknowledge the enjoyment. You just say, hey, I'm enjoying this. Like, this is enjoyable for me. It's hard work. We have milestones we're trying to hit. But I think what you're saying here, Aaron, is so important, that we get on these hamster wheels towards growth. We want to make it happen. We want to see incredible results, and we don't do the simple act sometimes of just pausing sometimes and just saying, like, hey, we achieved something here. Did you have fun in achieving that? Because if you did, we should probably talk about that, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's, I think for you coming from sport as well, right? It's the camaraderie component. Like, there's clear that you've taken that from your time in sport. You're able to bring that now into the business world. And here we are speaking about what you see in the future, some of the things that have happened over the course of this year, how it's now preparing you to go and do what it is you're looking to achieve to finish out the year. I'm curious now, if you were to maybe identify one or two of those next steps for you as an entrepreneur, where do you now see the place for growth for you individually in order to continue to see the growth that you want to see for the company?
You know, it's an interesting question, because I think so many people focus on, oh, here's my weaknesses, and that's where you should focus on, where, you know, I don't necessarily agree with that. And I focus on kind of my strengths and how I can get better at those things. And so, you know, I've learned that I am not the best at developing the product, and part of that's because of my vision. You know, being legally blind, I'm not the best at being a COO, but guess what? My sister is really good at being a COO. She's really good at helping to test the tool, work with the team, that type of stuff. Guess what? I'm not trying to get better at that. Her focus is she can deal with all the operations side. I'm terrible at that, and guess what? She's 1,000 times better than me, and that's why we work really well together. I'm great at lead generation. I'm great at marketing. I'm great at that side of stuff. And I've kind of proven that through my speaking business and other things I've done. And so for me, is there a lot I need to learn there? Yes. I've gotten really, really good at the, you know, SEO side, obviously, but also the cold outreach side, you know, cold email, LinkedIn, all of that. I've landed tons of business for my stuff in the past through that. That's great. One thing that I haven't had to run in the past is ads. I've never really learned ads. And so that is one side of things that, given that this is a SaaS tool, I need to now start to focus and learn and grow in that space, because if we want to hit certain things that we want to, we need to be running ad campaigns. You know, maybe we don't need it to get to the first 25 customers, but if we want to get to the first 100, 200, absolutely. And so that's an area of focus for me that over the next kind of few weeks, few months, I'm going to be diving significantly into learning ads, learning how to do that, learning how to get more people to come in organically that way, because we'll be running cold outreach and that stuff. But in this type of tool, it's different from my speaking. It's only going to get us so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's it's an important message for folks to hear, is this notion of, let's not always think about answering that question I'm asking by assessing where we have weaknesses, but actually building upon our strengths. I think you could probably have two people argue from one side of that and the other for hours at nauseum. I don't know whether this is a right versus wrong sort of topic, but at the same time, I think for me, what I'm hearing is that it allows you as a leader to ensure that you're surrounding yourself with the people that maybe make up for the areas where you do have weaknesses. And we're not good at that as humans. We always want to, especially once we take ownership of something, it's like, hey, I want to be the one that does everything to make sure that I have my finger on the pulse of everything, even if I'm not the best person for it. I just need to know that I'm the one owning it. And for me, I've had to learn how to do that the hard way in the past 6 to 12 months myself. What has made it easier for you, I suppose, to actually put your hand up and say, hey, listen, don't know how to do this, need to find somebody else to do this? Like, what is it that allows you to find comfort in making those decisions?
I think for me, and it goes back to kind of one topic that I kind of talk about occasionally in my speeches, but asking for help and understanding that aspect. I think that too many people are brought up to believe that asking for help is a sign of weakness, when it's not. It's a sign of strength, and it's a sign that you know what you can do, where your confidence is at, and where you need support. And I think growing up being legally blind, I had to learn how to ask for help. You know, for me, that's something that isn't something I had to learn. It was something that was ingrained in me from such a young age, because there were aspects of life and things in school and sports that I had to get help with. And so I learned how to ask for help and when to ask for help and when to do things on my own. You know, that developed into this where, you know, Raina, my sister, you know, I trust her, you know, with everything in my life, and there isn't even a second there, and so there isn't even a, you know, question there. Of course, we make decisions on things together and all of that, but I trust her completely, you know, with all of the stuff that she focuses on, you know, because of that. I mean, we grew up our, you know, whole lives together. There's aspects of, you know, someone on my team, you know, who's, you know, in the Philippines, and, you know, she started off doing some lead generation and things for me. She's basically grown into, I'd call it like my chief of staff. She runs like basically my whole life. I'd be so screwed without her. And, you know, I trust her with so many things. Right now, we brought someone new onto the team for certain things, and honestly, she's done like 75% of the training, because I had to travel some last week and just had a busy kind of schedule, and I'm been involved with him. I've been on a lot of calls with him today and some stuff tomorrow, but like, she's doing a lot of the training. And, you know, I trust her, and I've been with her for years at this point. And, you know, because of that, I've developed that relationship. But I think it's finding those people in your life that you can trust, that are in your business that you can trust, but also understanding that it's okay to ask for help.
I'm hearing that there's an argument to be made that growth, whether it be individual or on behalf of a business collectively, growth is always going to be limited if we're not willing to ask for help. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think for me, I definitely had a head down approach for a long time in my life, because the results proved that I could get away with it that way. And it's interesting, considering what we've already discussed here, is that it was when my vision got big enough to where I knew that this is no longer something that Steve can deliver upon alone, that it was going to be time to not only ask for help, but then to go to that next point that you made there of trust, is to like, how do I build the trust with people to where I can just say, hey, I'm going to be gone on a Disney cruise, as I was last week, for a week, and be able to know that certain things were being taken care of. And I think you're alluding to something as well here as well around the relationships, is like, hey, like, invest in the relationship first before maybe over troubling someone maybe with the work. Like, you want to make sure that they're obviously, you know, are capable of the work, but at the same time, I'm hearing from you that you've actually invested a ton of time in building the relationship, and as you've built trust with the relationship, you've then been able to find that, hey, this makes sense that I now assign this individual more work.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. The one thing I will say is I think a lot of people hear kind of how my sister and I work together or something, and they think, oh, working with friends or family is a good idea. I do not agree with that.
Right.
My sister and I have a very unique relationship of how we grew up together and worked together, I think, honestly associated with my vision. And, because of that, we built a relationship where we work very, very well together.
Yeah.
I will never hire other family and friends unless it is a very specific circumstance. We've talked about it in the past. There were pasts where we wanted to bring on a friend to do something and we voted against it. And, there are a couple people, like there's someone who, we've talked about down the road who, basically he's very close with me and my sister, and his job at a large company is managing overseas teams in developing products. And Raina, my sister, like she likes the operations side. She doesn't like managing the team overseas who's developed. Like she doesn't like that. Like he could fit in really well there down the road when we grow, if that's the case. But like there has to be a very unique circumstance, because if something were to happen, like it could ruin that relationship. And I think that you need to, in most cases, not in all cases, but in most cases, I would not hire family and friends.
Yeah. And trust me, I was not alluding to that at all, because I am in agreement with you there as well. Is that there certainly has to be a real need when it comes to that. But at the same time, I think so much of what you're speaking to here around this notion of trusting the relationship, building ownership of work through the relationship, and doing it all just from this notion of how can I grow by allowing others to take ownership outside of myself. And so I think that is a huge insight that I'm taking from this. But Aaron, listen, man, like I'm so thankful that we got this opportunity to reconnect again. I'm glad that we were able to give Precision Search at least 2 or 3 minutes of just discussing what the platform is, what the software is, how it's going to be of use to folks. But more importantly, I love just your willingness to let us in under the hood, if you will, of just like, hey, entrepreneurship, it sounds super glamorous, right? Especially when we start talking about these 8-9 figure sales that we want to eventually get to. But truth be told, this is work, but we can find fun in that work. And I think that's something I'm taking from this conversation as well. But before I let you go, brother, I need to give you the space and the time just to tell us everything we need to know where we can learn more about whether it's just yourself or obviously the company as a whole as well.
Yeah, so precisionsearch.io is the website for that tool. My website's aarongolub.com. I mean, you can find me on social media, on LinkedIn. You can email me either at aaron@aarongolub.com, or if you want more info about the tool, aaron@precisionsearch.io. And so, I will respond to you if you have any questions or want to chat.
Especially if you're in Columbia, South Carolina. That's what I took from this today, is that you're very accessible there.
Yeah, I'll have to fly across the country again, but that's all right.
Love it. All right, brother, this was great. Appreciate you having you back on. All the best.
Thank you. You too.
And my thanks again to Aaron for joining us on this episode of Growth Ready. Adaptability was right there in Aaron's initial response to what it means to be growth ready. And I think at the heart of the show, we do acknowledge adaptability, albeit passively, I would say at times, without getting right to the heart of what does it mean to be adaptable. And I think Aaron's interview today allows us to really understand what that means, what it means to be truly adaptable. You have to have an appetite to firstly lean in and take on something that is going to be an actual challenge. Whether it be starting a business, whether it be a career change, whether it be something on a personal level, you have to be willing to say that there is a need for change, and I'm going to lean into it for a long enough amount of time to where I am challenged to adapt, giving myself that opportunity to then learn from this phase of adaptation. We can't learn anything if we don't allow for enough time to go by where we are, in fact, adapting. And we can find fun in that too. Again, another point that Aaron made there within the discussion. How can you start to look at opportunities to be adaptable as a way of having fun, as a way of growing in some capacity to where you are better equipped to take on whatever it is you aspire to take on moving forwards? So again, I really do appreciate the time with Aaron today. I love that we were able to get into the heart of some of that competitive athlete spirit that we alluded to when we discussed the first time that he was on the show. But for anything and everything in regards to Aaron and what he's got working on there with Precision Search, I would love for you just to take that time. Go check out his product. Who knows? Maybe it is a good fit for you. Not that we're about advertising people's businesses necessarily on this show, but it does sound like it's an awesome opportunity and idea for a lot of folks. So don't hesitate to go check that out and reach out to Aaron as well. But in the meantime, as always, folks, I appreciate you taking the time to join us, and I wish you nothing but the best with anything and everything you've got going on in your world. Look forward to doing this again with you very soon, and bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to Growth Ready. If you liked what you heard and are feeling ready to grow, be sure to leave a 5-star rating, subscribe to the show, and share the episode with someone you know is ready to fuel their growth journey today. We love our community, so don't hesitate to reach out to us at podcast@growthready.com. And until next time, we are Growth Ready, and you will be too.